well today I want to show how to make some cute little candy decorations out of clay. So I have a couple of ideas on this little witch. And this is one I'm going to show how to make today. It's just an easy little lollipop made out of clay, and it's stuck onto a toothpick. So I'll show you how to do that. It's really easy. It's a nice glaze on there that makes it look sticky, and I hot glued it into the hair here, so that's why it's just hanging there. I won't show how to make this one, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You know, I just kind of shaped the clay into a little rectangle, and then I was able to use one of my clay tools to make it look like a bite was missing out of it. So that's just a real cute, easy one. This one didn't get any glaze because it should look like chocolate, and chocolate wouldn't be shiny. But you know, a lot of cute little Halloween crafts like this, a little piece of candy would make it look really fun and festive, but you don't want to use real candy. You don't want to have anything that's going to have sugar and bring ants and all kinds of bugs and things. So you have to make your own candies out of things like clay. And it's really easy to do because when you put a little bit of glaze on there, it shines it right up and makes it look like it's a real something sticky and made of sugar. And so it's really fun and easy to make little things like this. So we'll get started on making a lollipop and then maybe a couple other little things too. So the first thing I'm going to do is get a toothpick, and I'm just going to use some cutters to cut the end of it off. So figure out about how long you want it to be. That's pretty good. You could get crazy with it if you want, and you could even take some sandpaper and you know, smooth out the end of this, because this flat part here is going to be our end. I won't worry about that. It's just going to be this piece here that just shows and sticks out. You could even paint it white if you really wanted to, but we're not going to get into anything like that. The pointy side is what's going to poke right inside the clay ball after we make it. So I think I'm going to do it with pink or purple. I guess I'm going to do purple. I'm going to need to soften this up in my hands. So that's a nice color for Halloween. You know, orange, purple, green. All those colors are nice to use for anything Halloween-y. So this one's going to be a little bit crumbly. I'm going to work it in my hands and soften it up. The heat from your hands will work to do that. And just kind of mushing it around and kneading it in your hands a while will help make this soft and easy to work with. So I'll be right back once I get this worked out and soft enough to use. Alright, now you can already see it starting to come together, a little bit softer, a little easier to work with. I do have some wax paper down here on my table, so I didn't mention that before, but it does keep everything a little bit cleaner because the clay can be a little bit greasy and leave some residue behind. It's already a little bit shiny. Of course, it doesn't get as shiny as I want it to be just from rolling it around in your hands. I still have some little cracks and things I need to smooth out, so I just put it there in the center of my hand and just kind of go around in a circular motion, pressing a little bit hard to kind of seal all those cracks up as I go, and just checking it every once in a while to make sure it's not coming out crooked or lopsided. I want this to be a nice perfect ball. Alright, now if we're going to make this look like a dum-dum lollipop, they always have that little ridge around them that looks like this. So to make that, I'm just going to roll this into sort of like a little snake shape, and then I just took off an extra small little chunk of clay to do this. Okay, get it to be, you know, about the same thickness all the way down, so you don't have any area where it's going to come out a little crooked, because you want this to be almost ready to go when you roll it out. And I'll just take one of my tools. You could use a pen or anything. You don't have to use a special rolling pin or anything. You could even use the side of this. That would be fine. Just to roll this flat. And it might get a little crooked, and that's okay. You can always trim off the extra, which you might have to do anyways, because I might want this to be a little crisper on the edges. And it won't stick down permanently, so you can move it over if you need to work with it that way. Just make sure that it's long enough to wrap all the way around the ball. You might need to test it out before you go. Of course, once you flatten it out, it does become a little bit longer. So if it's coming up a little short when you test it out, it might be okay if you're able to roll it out thin enough. And if there's an area where it doesn't get covered, that'll just be the back if you're going to glue this on to something as a little decoration. Alright, so there's that, and I think I will just clean up the edges a little bit and use one of these tools. They make all kinds of neat little clay tools. They even make this really long X-Acto knife that's kind of like just a little thin piece. It's maybe 6 inches long, maybe 1 inch wide, and you just use it to do, you know, exactly this. You would just use it to chop one clean cut, and then you'd be done, instead of having to, you know, be really careful about where you're making your cuts. It just does one chop for you because it's such a long blade. And it also swivels. It can bend a little bit, so if you're trying to get a rounded cut, you can do that too, which is kind of cool. But for something small like this, I'd rather use a tiny X-Acto knife anyways, rather not use anything too big. Alright, so there we go. I trimmed that end, but I didn't trim the other because I'm just going to start to stick it on. It sticks to itself pretty good, but sometimes you do need to help it out along the way. You are going to end up with some fingerprints. You can't really help that. One thing you could try to do is wear gloves, but then you're just going to get glove prints. You're just going to get wrinkles on here from the gloves you're wearing. So there we go. Now we see where it is matching up. We can just cut it right there. Yeah, so you just have to kind of figure you're going to get some fingerprints. Try not to squeeze it and make it all misshapen, but just kind of tap it gently as you go around to seal it all on there. And that little crease will just stay in the back. Okay, so there's that. We can hold it really carefully and gently while we poke the toothpick in there. Just enough until it stays. We don't want it to poke out the top or anything. You don't even want to see any little bumps or any dimples showing up on the top there where this might have started to poke its way through. If you need to reshape it, get it back into the round ball that it was, you can do that. But this guy is ready to go in the oven. Don't keep it in there for longer than a couple of minutes. You could put it on 400 in a little toaster oven and then just keep an eye on it. If it starts to smoke, take it out right away. And then just leave it on the pan until it can cool off enough for you to touch it. You don't want to put glaze on it right away as soon as it comes out of the oven, so we'll give this guy a couple of minutes after we bake it. And I think in the meantime we're going to move on to something else. Alright, so another little thing I've been wanting to make out of clay is just a cute little candy corn. So I'm just going to take off a pinch of white and I just roll them up so that way the clay stays clean, especially the white. I don't want it to pick up any color. Take off a little pinch of orange, not too much. I just want to make one little piece. And it's nice and soft. Okay, and then the top of it, the biggest part, is yellow. So I'll take off some yellow. Okay, now you can always mix these if you want them to be lighter shades, darker shades, whatever. You can always mix them with another color in your hands before you work with them. And just try to mix them thoroughly because you'll see that marbled look if that's not what you want. You want to make sure you mix it all the way. So I'm just going to kind of roll these into little, I don't know, like mini Tootsie Roll shapes, I guess, and line them all up next to each other. So pretty thick because I want to have something to work with, and I want this to be, big enough to be able to cut some away and still have a life-size candy corn piece. And candy is small, so we don't have to make any of these pieces super large unless you were trying to make something bigger, in which case I probably wouldn't use polymer clay because the packages are so small. You don't want to make anything too big with it. It's going to be heavy and expensive. So doing small things like this looks like it could be an actual lollipop because that's the right size. Okay, so I've got my orange, stick right next to it, and then the tiny little bit of white, which is not much at all, just that little corner on the candy corn. I'm just going to push them all together and smush them pretty good. I'm already going to kind of shape it like a candy corn in my hand before I roll across them to flatten them out and then cut away the extra. So I'm really working on this right now, just squeezing it on the top and bottom and on the sides as I'm doing this to kind of stick it all together because I don't want any pieces coming loose. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to sort of roll right over the top like that. Okay, flatten it out a little bit. We don't have to worry about flattening our sides because that will come flat when we cut it with the X-Acto. Okay. And just keep it like a triangle shape. Remember, the top is not super pointy, it's kind of rounded, so top doesn't have to look really perfect. And then this back part is also rounded, so we're going to leave that pretty round too. You can cut away little pieces at a time. This X-Acto knife is kind of short, so it doesn't let me cut too much at a time. Okay, I'm just going to go flat at the end of that. Reshape as I need to with my hands. leave this end kind of rounded just like that, I think. And I think this one would look kind of cool leaving it as it is, with just that slight amount of shine on there from the grease in the, or oil rather, in the clay. But I think it would also look really nice with a little shine on there. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this one, but I will set it aside for now because this will also go in the oven later with our lollipop. And I'm thinking I might make just one more. So this I'm just going to take a little bit of blue and I'm just going to roll it into a ball. I'm not going to do anything fancy with it. And in the end, when it comes out of the oven, I don't even know if I'm going to put glaze on it. I'm just going to use a little bit of a plastic bag, a little cellophane bag, cut away maybe a rectangle shape of it, and then just kind of wrap it around so it looks like a hard candy in a clear plastic wrapper. So you'll see what I mean. But let me just go ahead and shape this first. This one's coming together pretty nicely. Not as crummy as the purple. And then we'll put all 3 of these in the oven at the same time. Alright, so they have come out of the oven. They are nice and cool. I already went and put the ball inside this little piece of plastic. So I just used like a, just a little piece of cellophane. It was a tiny little bag. You can just use any kind of little piece of plastic that's clear like this. And then I made sure it fit on there, wrapped it, kind of rolled it up, and then twisted the ends and put just the tiniest little bit of hot glue. I mostly just let the nozzle of the glue gun just sort of melt a little bit through the plastic to seal it all together so that it doesn't come untwisted. And that was really easy to do. You can make a whole bunch of these and they just look so real. And, just make sure whatever you put them on, you glue them down pretty good so nobody tries to eat it. And then I think I'm going to leave the candy corn like it is. I'm going to leave it dull. I'm not going to shine it. The back is flat, so maybe if you were going to stick it to something, just make sure you glue the back part that didn't really get shaped as well onto whatever you're putting it on. And then I just have this. You could use clear Elmer's glue, but I'm going to use triple thick glaze, just a little bit thinner, to put a nice little shine on the lollipop since that is not getting any sort of wrapper on it. And lucky for us, it has a little handle, so we don't have to worry about touching any of the spots that we're putting the glaze on because you don't want to be taking it off. And sometimes if you're just trying to glaze, like let's say the little piece of candy corn, you wouldn't really have a place to hold on to it. But this is nice because it comes with a little handle. It's got the stick in there. So I just make sure I get this going all the way around. It does dry clear, so if there's any spot where it looks a little bit cloudy, you won't notice that, and you can layer it on pretty thick. You could even do 2 coats if you want. You just have to make sure that first coat is really, really dry. I would probably just come back to it the next day just to be sure, because if it's a little tacky, you try to do a second coat over it while it's still trying to dry, you might just end up pulling up whatever you had just put down on that first coat, and then it will look a little bit wrinkly or have some spots on it where it didn't quite lay smooth. All right. So this can sit on its own, sit upright and dry. I have this little piece of flat styrofoam sitting here because if you're going to make a whole bunch of these, you just want to have a place where you can stick them where they're not going to be rolling around and then, sticking to something or maybe losing some of their glaze that you just put on there. Maybe you could make the holes ahead of time so you have a nice little place where they can sit, but it can just sit just like that. And as long as you poke them in there straight down and you didn't have them leaning, this thing won't fall over. So these are really easy to make. And I even, as I was going and kind of playing with the clay, I went and made a whole bunch of these little, I just kind of rolled the clay into like a long snake, and I made a whole bunch of these. I cut them in segments, and these I can just bake them and save them for another time to have fake sprinkles to put on something. So these little small doodads just add something extra special to your crafts. And so when you need something cute and little and you don't have it at the store, you can make it out of clay, and you can always just make a whole bunch of these and figure out what to do with them later.